Jayvien Piper was 22 years old when he was gunned down near McCowan Road and Sandhurst Circle while on the way home from a night class in Scarborough. He was an aspiring fashion designer and was trying to get his grade 12 credits so he could attend George Brown College. Jayvien was also a father of a young daughter. He was taken to Sunnybrook Hospital where he stayed in ICU for 2 days before his family had to take him off life support. It has been almost 20 years and his killers have never been caught. Detective Steve Smith with the Toronto Police Cold Case Unit says this was no random shooting. During the investigation, detectives were able to determine that a small, green Honda Civic pulled up close to where Jayvien was walking. A male passenger exited the vehicle and started walking up to Jayvien, who fled on foot. This person actually tracked him and followed him to the point where he ended up catching up to him in the area around Woodside Mall. At that time, Jayvien was shot a number of times. The fatal shot would be to his head. The green Honda Civic reappeared. The shooter boarded the Civic again and they drove away. Investigators say they have been able to identify the vehicle involved and they believe they know who is responsible, but they don't have enough evidence. This has been extremely frustrating for Jayvien's mother Sandra Piper, who wants to know why her son's murder has yet to be solved. A thorough probe was done in Jayvien's death. Unfortunately, the difference between investigators knowing who committed a crime and being able to prosecute a crime in court is that they need definitive evidence to prove these persons are the murderers, says Detective Steve Smith. He further added it was an awful case. It was terrible. The fact that they chased him down in order to basically execute him. It's ridiculous that these things occur in our city. It is something that we as a group would like to solve. I mean, the community itself as well as the officers. This is a murder that we'd really like to solve. Jayvien's mother Sandra Piper wants justice for her son. She's being quoted as saying, "I want to know who did this and I want to know exactly why." Sadly, she may never get those answers unless the perpetrator or those close to them come forward. In 2021, Sandra did an interview with the Tracking a Killer, the Cold Case Files podcast. Snippets of that interview will follow.
He was working and he was going to night school. He wanted to go to George Brown College to take a fashion design course. He always loved to draw. It was something that we had planned to do together. He was going to do the design and I was going to do the sewing. I was watching the news and I kind of saw his jacket, the coat that he was wearing, but I switched it because I was thinking it wasn't him. And then about 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard a knock on the door. And when I opened the door, there was this big white dude. And I looked and I'm like, it's a police officer. And my nephew also was there with him because they went to my mother's house. Because that's where Jayvien usually is. He's usually at my mom's. If he's not home with me, he's by his mom, by his grandmother, or by his girlfriend. So they went to my mother's house and then they came to my house because no one knew where I lived. They came to the door. The police officer didn't tell me. It was my nephew who told me what happened. Insisted that I go to the hospital. I didn't want to go because I didn't believe them. About 10 minutes after I got there, they were wheeling him out of surgery. He was in the ICU for 2 days. He was shot on March 3rd, I believe at about 10:30 p.m. And he died March 5th at 7 p.m. We had to pull the plug. They were spitting, they were rapping. That is where they kind of insult each other. One of the guys that was there, the one that was pitting with my son, he was insulting me, his girlfriend, his grandmother, his daughter. So when it was time for my son to spit or rap back, he did not like what my son was saying, so he attacked my son, thinking that he would be able to beat up my son, but he couldn't. So that's what got him angry. So he came back the next day gun and a knife. My nephew, who this person knew, was holding my granddaughter, Jayvien's daughter, and he said, "Look, Jayvien, I have your daughter." When Jayvien looked, that's when he was slashed with the knife across his face. And they had to get the guy out of the house because even though my son was slashed across the face, he was going after him. And that's when he told him that he was going to kill him.